There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 70 is upon you. I thank you for joining me, and I want to especially thank my man Chris over here, who's joining us for the episode. But before we start blabbing your ears off, we have some people we need to thank, and those are the Sages of the Lodge, those who donate monthly to keep this train a-rolling, and that's Alex Pamal from All Nerds Welcome, David Fries, Brown Sugar and the Blind Albanos, the baddest motherfucker in the Southwest, Shane Thomas Driscoll, Chris Burkowski, Scott Castellano, Maria Palmieri, Andrew Parker, Julie Rossman, Nick Taborski, Charlotte Astry, Kevin McBride, Mike Fay, Richard Arnold, Dan Muller, Andrew Clay, and Roger Kemp. Thank you, every last one of you. You are more generous than you need to be. It is always appreciated, and we are going to keep this train a-rolling. Now,
right.
Jesus, I just completely shifted my camera.
Jeez, move, literally shaking the earth.
Shaking. Well, let's be honest.
Here.
We're here to talk about the ending of Persona 5. It did shake the earth.
It shook my earth.
Mine too.
Much.
And we want to split this podcast up, talking about Sumere, Akechi, then Maruki. But before we do that, I'd like if you just gave your overall take on the ending.
Okay. Well, I loved it, especially as sort of a, I would say I'm a pretty avid Persona fan, and I love the hell out of 5. And this felt like, because, it could have went either way for me, of like it felt like kind of tacked on or whatever. But I think ultimately at the end of it, I was thoroughly impressed, and I saw a lot of value that came, because they did a lot of things in this ending that they have not done in other Persona games that I'm aware of thus far. And, Maruki as a character and everything that he sort of represents is like, they've not really had that sort of a pseudo-villain character. And kind of had someone that you could be like, is he bad? Is he wrong? And it's not like a new, it's something that's been done in plenty of other things before, but I think within the context of this game, it was something that kind of came out of left field, but in a good way. It wasn't just like, oh, what's this random, thing that they're just throwing out, hey, I just defeated God and now let's jump into something else,
Well,
and,
I think I just want to punch in, when it comes to Maruki, one of the things that I absolutely loved was you have a guy like Maruki. I mean, the game is based around justice, right? Like trying to enforce true justice. Then you have a guy like Maruki, who is a good guy underneath it all, but he's unjust. Then you have a guy like, at least in this situation, in the context of this epilogue, and then you have a guy like Akechi, who is not good by any means, but in the context of this epilogue, he's completely just.
Yeah, he's completely, in the right. I mean, they're both in the right, technically.
Exactly. But the idea that, that your villain wasn't evil, rather misguided, it's definitely, at least compared to base game Persona, where you're taking out fucking pedophiles and people who are abusing children and shit. It's like it's, having Maruki show up and
it's morally gray, whereas everyone else is pretty much like, yeah, you're an abject piece of shit, so I have no problem. Whatever happens to you, I don't care. But yeah, with Maruki, especially since he's like, very even keeled, and he's like a generally like nice person, but as you come to find out, he has his life probably could have went a different way. But because of how things played out, he kind of went down this road.
Well, I think all our characters, with the exception of maybe Joker, have things that have relatively traumatized them. Mostly because they're young, they're kids. I feel like that gets forgotten sometimes, that, the protagonists are children. They're like 16 years old. But Maruki's no different than them. And I think that was a big part of this. And we'll get into it when we get to the Maruki section. But, Maruki wasn't that different from the Phantom Thieves. He had maybe just like one bolt turned differently.
Yeah, it's like if something, if one, thing had gone slightly different for him, he probably could have, allied himself with the Phantom Thieves,
Which is what he wanted at the end of the day. But let's get into Sumere. I want to get into Sumere.
Yes.
Let me lower my microphone. I feel like it's a little too loud, but
yeah, her, so she kind of kicks off the whole the whole crux of this epilogue part of the game.
Yeah, she's right in the center. So, by the way, this should be implied by the title, everybody. But
Massive spoilers
massive spoilers are coming
for
in. So if you haven't
everything.
finished Persona 5 The Royal, go for
Yeah,
it.
I felt like we should have said that maybe in the beginning.
It's all right. I
Maybe
think down
when you
here
do it
I'm
in
going to have a
post.
little spoiler alert. When you boot
Oh
up the
yeah,
episode, it's going to be spoiler alert at the
a
bottom.
huge big spoils. Because even saying the name Sumere is a huge spoiler.
Yeah. So, you know, the bird's flown the coup on this one.
Oh yeah.
So, quite a little mind fuck there. That the girl that we knew as Kasumi this whole time ended up being Sumere, and that she had assumed the identity of her sister.
Yeah, who does, and they both did gymnastics. They were basically identical in every way, except, you know, Sumere was a little bit more like, I don't know, introverted, I guess.
Yeah, you had an introvert and an extrovert, you know?
Yeah.
In a way, dude, what do you think? To me, I'm just seeing like a female repeat of Cloud and Zack. And I say that to their credit. It's almost kind of the same idea of taking on someone's living legacy, but taking it a little too far. You know?
I could definitely see that. I mean, when it was, because I was just rewatching the cutscene before this, and you know, when I first saw it, I was like, yeah, you know, I kind of guessed. It wasn't like a huge, you know, it wasn't a huge bomb for me at that moment. It was definitely, I didn't see it coming until as it was happening, you know, because like we had talked about, you know, as we were both playing through the game, you had said to me like, dude, her head's pretty big on the box. Like something has to happen with this character. And, you know, everything up until this late, you know, this palace pretty much, she's barely in the game at all. You know,
yeah,
and it's like,
she's subtly like in the sub narrative.
yeah, she's like, she shows up in these random spots and you can hang out with her sometimes on a few random days. And other than that, it's like, yeah, you know, and like, you know that she gets a persona because you see her get her persona.
Yeah, and like the prologue.
You know, and it's like, okay, so she obviously plays a part, but she doesn't actually really play that big of a part until
we hit this epilogue.
Yeah, until we had all this. So, you know, I enjoyed it, and I like the sort of misdirect that they had, where it's like, is it her palace? You know, like until you find out that she's Sumere, you don't know that Maruki is even involved in this place until you actually hear his voice. You know, because you see the you know, you hear the, you know, they give you the subtitles for, you know, man's voice or whatever, and you don't actually hear his voice until that cutscene, and then you're like, oh,
and now it all starts kind of coming together.
Yeah, and once I heard his voice, I was like, oh boy, okay, I see where they're going with this.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie to you. Once we hit that scene and I saw Kasumi's hair was like brown, I just kept going, oh no.
Yeah, and then she looks out and she said, oh, where's Sumere? Oh, there she is, and you know, pointing to Kasumi over on the side. You're like, hey, Sumere, I did it. You know, and I'm like, okay. And then like, because they were definitely, you know, they were definitely hinting at it in the lead up to that moment, but you know, it was something. It wasn't like, it was really funny because it was something that, as it was happening, I was like, oh, okay, I see where they're going. You know, it's something that I'm like, okay, I get what we're doing now. And then, you know, you know, I like the little narrative things that they did where like she was trying to fight her way through and try to like fight past the whole thing, and that she wasn't actually doing any damage. Yeah. You know, she like was fighting those monsters and they were blocking everything that she did.
Well, we've talked about it. One of the things we liked about this epilogue is, you know, it was very narrative driven. You know, even a lot of the fights were cinematic. They let you go through the motions of selecting your attacks, but a lot of it was very cinematic. The whole Sumere Kasumi thing pretty much sits on the crux of what the game's moral question is. You know, they gave Sumere like the most tragic backstory you could imagine. You know, her older sister, who she completely idolized and looked up to, sacrificed herself to save Sumere from a car. And then, you know, you got to imagine being, how old is she? Like 14. And you see your older
14,
sister
15,
get bashed in the head by a car and bleed out in the middle of the street. Like at 14, that'll fuck anybody up. Unless you're a sociopath. But that'll fuck anybody up. So
I'm pretty sure it would.
It becomes really believable when Maruki offers her this alternative where it's like, hey, you don't have to be in pain like this. You know, there's another way. you can live out Kasumi's life. I can give you,
The
I
peace
can
that
make
you
it
want.
so that you don't have to deal with your tragedy. So
Yeah.
we kind of learned where this palace is going. Maruki rather, has found a way to relieve people of their pain and tragedy by morphing their realities, quite
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah, and as we come to learn later on that he's literally shaping reality and to everyone's desires, and which, like I said, it's very interesting because, like, yeah, he's just trying to do the right thing, but at the same time, it's not really solving the problem. It's literally just being like, hey, you know, don't. He's basically just saying, run away from your problems.
And the thing
Don't
I love
acknowledge
about
them.
that, the thing I love about that is I feel like that's a conversation, we're having. I don't want to get too existential and say we live in a society here, but like we're having this conversation of, are we being too protective? Are our parents these days too overprotective?
Right.
Great video for anyone who's listening. Check out the Night Sky Prince. He did a whole video on this, and he said Maruki's really like being an overprotective parent.
Oh, absolutely.
You
I
know what I
found
mean?
like, and it's something that you as you kind of learn who or how he got to where he is, it makes 100% sense of like, that's how he would think of, that's his version of saving people, is by shielding them from reality and, creating their own little dream reality where everyone's parents are alive and everyone, no one has any problems, and
Ryuji's on the
everyone,
track team. Yeah,
everyone always gets an extra an extra piece of candy, or
everyone
something,
gets the participation trophy.
yeah. And it's like, and part of me, because part of, before you kind of go into his palace proper, you have to go to each one of your members of the Phantom Thieves and kind of, you can kind of play it both ways, but you kind of just, you have to like give them a little hint of like, this isn't right, and
Yep.
this isn't right. And part of me felt really bad because, like we said before, some of these characters go through some really fucked up shit.
Traumatized.
And
They're all traumatized.
and to see them all, like, like seeing Futaba with her mom, and
And how happy she is. She's like a whole
yeah,
other person.
yeah, and like everyone, everyone who has everything that they pretty much lost throughout the course of this game or before it, seeing them with that and seeing them really happy kind of made me feel shitty.
Yeah,
To be
because
like,
you have to tear people away from their happiness. But in many ways,
yeah.
like, going with like Maruki being the overprotective parent,
Mhm.
you're almost like that older brother who has to
Yeah,
come
to be like,
around and, walk you to school or walk you
yeah,
home.
a little bit of tough love, kind of, just
Exactly.
like, hey.
I love that one of the dialogue options was, as you kind of poke at them and they start to
Mhm.
question things, you can say, "I'll be waiting for you."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where like you have no doubt of like, yeah, they know this is effed up, And I did choose that for some of them, of like, like,
Yeah.
especially like some of the like Makoto and Yusuke and like some of like of these smarter Phantom Thieves. I'd be like, this is
I
wrong.
know you know better.
Yeah.
And I think, and I don't know what the Persona fan base's reaction is to this. Nor do I care. I'm sure they're all lovely people, but but I kind of like the idea that they all relapse because it led to third awakenings. If you maxed out their confidants,
Yep.
but I like that they all felt so remorseful towards Joker, like begging for forgiveness. Like, hey, I swore to stick by you. I swore to see all this through to the end, and I abandoned you. You kept fighting this whole time. I was over here living in a fantasy world. And I like that because, again, we have to remember that these are kids. And just because they had their resolves earlier in the game doesn't mean they won't relapse on the same mistakes.
Exactly.
And you think about it. If there were some existential god creature who could solve your trauma and give you your mother back, a 16-year-old's going to take that deal.
Absolutely. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And it's, it's something like you can't even blame them.
No, not at all.
For wanting that, and especially when the game itself is trying to get you as Joker to look at the situation and be like, maybe, I don't know, maybe you should do that. Maybe you should just let it happen,
Well,
then
in a game where Joker's not very autonomous, in this epilogue, he was conflicted. He would stay up late in bed and
you could legitimately choose to accept his reality. There's an ending for that. And I think that's really interesting. And you can also convince Akechi to also go along with it as well, which is another really interesting thing, which I have not fully seen everything related to that. But I think that concept, especially since the thing that you said that you liked about Akechi the most during this sequence is that he is very much like, no, fuck this. No, like just straight up just is immediately like the first time you see him come back when all this shit's going on, he's like, you know something's up, don't you? That's literally the first thing he says to Joker. He's like, you know this shit's fucked up, right? You know, and I love that.
Well, he knows you're the real deal too, so he knows he can at least rely on you not to be completely brainwashed.
Yeah, and by the way, I love how the game, it literally does not skip a beat. Like, you kill God, and then you go back down to the Shibuya crossing, and then
power vacuum.
Yeah, and I love how they explain that. It was like, yeah, it's literally this all happened because there was no one there to stop it from happening.
Yep.
You know, so you know, it makes 1,000% sense. And it's like, once I saw Akechi there, you know, I was like, because at some point you don't know whether it's like, oh, did they retcon this because people didn't like that he died in the original, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And even from that very moment, I was like, something's up here. I just don't know what yet, and wouldn't know for, you know, a couple more hours until I finished the palace. But man, it's thoroughly enjoyed. Enjoyed everything about that.
Me too. And just to bring it back to Sumere and round it out, I loved her persona. I think I love the idea. The thing I love the most about this character is she really looks up to Joker. You know, she looks up to Senpai, and
she even kind of looks like him.
And I was about to get to that.
Her Phantom Thief outfit also.
Exactly. I was about to get to that because everybody's Phantom Thief outfit is what their idea of a rebel is. And I think the reason Sumere really looks up to Joker is because he really is a rebel. So to her, a rebel just looks like him, which is why their outfits are so similar. And I thought that was a very nice touch. It's very fluent. And that's what I like. I really like designers who don't just design something cool. They design something that's cool and makes sense for the character's perception of reality. And I think,
and you know, it probably also is like huge waifu bait as well.
Oh, it's a sexy outfit.
A little bit, maybe a little bit of pandering going on, but you know, for the sake of everything else, and you know, not for nothing, I like the fact that she's not a Phantom Thief.
Yes.
Like she says like, hey, it's cool that you guys are, you know, you're doing this. I don't vibe with that, you know. And it's just like straight up is like, I would help you, but I don't really agree with what you guys are doing. So
exactly,
you know, I'm just gonna go do my thing over here, and I'll help you out if you really need it, I guess. But
when we have a common enemy, finally, we'll figure it out. But
yeah,
Go ahead.
No. Go.
Gotcha. All right. So I was just going to say, we talked about it. Her head's big on the box. And, I knew they were making these changes, and I wasn't sure. You always go in with an open mind. But I can't imagine this story without her anymore. I can't imagine this world without her. She played such a vital role. She's there basically as, I don't want to say the moral scapegoat, but the moral question kind of works through Kasumi and Sumere because she's the one who's conflicted. Akechi is unwavering. Maruki is unwavering. You as Joker have an option of what you're going to be.
Yeah, either way, right?
Yeah. But then you have Sumere who's conflicted, and then she gives in, but then you beat her in the fight, and then she eventually flips over. It's so well done.
Because she doesn't want to go back to reality.
It's too hard for her.
Yeah, once she figures it out, and of course that's a huge traumatic, with her it was a huge traumatic event, and this is all spawned from that. So her having to be like, oh, I'm Sumere now, is to be like, oh, my sister also died in this very shitty way right in front of me.
And she blames herself for it too, because she had to get Sumere out of the way of the car. So she also has that guilt of oh, I killed her. She says it's too much. It's too much for her to live with, but she eventually comes around. And, when we get to the Maruki section of this podcast, we'll talk about, the moral implications of the decisions the characters are making. But getting off Sumere, incredible character, great persona, excellent development, incredible twist. Everything about this character was handled so well. But now I want
agree.
to talk about my favorite
Edgelord.
character.
The edgelord himself.
Edgelord himself. The character who in the first game I liked,
Mhm.
but
He didn't get
didn't
explored
love.
well enough.
Yeah,
in my
I
opinion.
didn't love him. They didn't give us a chance to love him. Right as he was finally becoming a super interesting character, they
They
just
fucking killed him off.
they popped him.
Like, well, killing
But
you off
then,
screen of all
yeah,
things. Not even on screen.
but then we kill the God of Control. Joker has to confess to his crimes in order to lock up Shido to prove
But
Mementos
wait,
exists. But wait, there's more. A
hold it.
dude, I'm gonna have a bunch of stories like this because just the nature of this game, I always end up playing it until 1 a.m. It's
Yep,
like
mhm.
1 a.m. Akechi shows up, says, "I'm the real deal," and I'm just, whoa, no,
Whoa!
what? Waking up my neighbors, like just waking up
Just
the whole neighborhood,
going
screaming that
full
Akechi's
ham.
alive. Full ham, full ham.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting it because it's literally, like I said before, it just like, oh, because I remember that part from the original of like you're talking to Sai and be like, oh, you're gonna, do like a month in jail or whatever for your crimes, and then for Akechi just walk out of the crowd, be like, hey, you know what? I'll take the hit. I'll take the hit,
I'll
guys.
take care of this.
And then the crowd goes wild.
Pretty much, and like,
you know.
not only was that comeback amazing,
Mm-hmm.
but we were getting into this before. They created a situation that Akechi could completely thrive on, as you brought up,
and be in his element.
and
Yes,
be in his true element. Because as you brought up, Maruki kind of takes over the power vacuum. Mementos and reality are one. He's bending everyone's reality, and Akechi's seems to be the only one who knows what's going on. And he pulls you aside. He's like, "All right, you know something's up, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, you and Akechi are on the same page. You have a common enemy. And because it's really just you and Akechi right now, Joker doesn't really talk. So all the dialogue goes through Akechi. All the story progression goes through Akechi. Everything is going through Akechi. And
Yep.
it allowed him to finally grow into the character that we only got to see little peeks
glimpses
of
yeah.
in the base game. And the thing I love the most about him is, like, you and I are in our late 20s. We've been around the world a little bit, still plenty of wisdom to gain.
Oh, yeah.
But we're at a point where we see what Maruki's doing, and I don't know about you, even though I could understand, obviously, why some Phantom Thieves chose to give in to Maruki's reality, I'm just repulsed by what I'm seeing. I'm like, this is just anti-human to the fucking core. I know Maruki's a good guy, but this is just Satanist bullshit. And like, it's like, and then there's Akechi, who, while the whole world is bending, is just unwavering, repulsed by what's going on. And I felt salvation from this character. I was like, yes. And then, you have the scenes in the palace where Maruki shows up and he gives you his moral justification. And Akechi's like, just shut your fucking mouth with that high and mighty bullshit. Like, get you
what
and your
you're
high
doing
and
is
mighty
wrong.
Bullshit out of here. And I'm just like, yes. And, we were going into it where it's like, Maruki's a good person, but he's unjust. Akechi's a bad person, but he is just. And there's just something about that dynamic.
It's a really good dynamic, actually.
That's just, I couldn't get enough of it. I just wanted more Maruki and Akechi interactions. I really couldn't get enough. And, you're in the middle of the palace and you're getting all the tapes that goes into Maruki's backstory. And you get to that last tape and Akechi's like, another one? Like, we know by now. We have to
we
keep
get
watching
it. We
these.
got it, okay? Jeez. Yes, we get it. Oh, your life was hard. Yes, so was all of ours.
Exactly. And then we get to see him be his, like, Memento self, where he's just a savage. It's like, let's run these guys to the ground. It's like,
I love when any character is like over the top and just like he's literally cackling at all the times and just being like, these fucking assholes are weak. We could stomp them. We could slaughter them. We could murder them. He's like saying all these like really just super over the top things, and I love it. And the fact that because you explore a little bit of that dungeon with just him, and like whenever you analyze anybody, he just says all this crazy stuff. And him and Joker's showtime is so perfect.
I can't get enough of it.
So good, and I love everything about his inclusion in this epilogue because. Like I said, or like you said, rather, seeing him in his true, like his actual true self, because for the most part we see his, we learn that he has this very public facing persona of the, the prince detective, and you
He's the
know
White Knight.
yeah, and then he comes in, and then only at the very end of his story do we see his actual true, like the crazy
The
face model and
calculating.
everything, and
Yeah.
that portrait art of his where he's got the crazy eye,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's good. It's nice to see him in that element, even though obviously he's not like a redeemable character in any sense,
And
but
he's not trying to redeem himself.
no, and
That's the
that's
best
the best
part.
part about it, is he's just he fully buys into, and especially considering where the story goes at this point, it's kind of interesting to see that, oh yeah, this is the true Akechi, we'll call him,
Yes.
God
Instead of
Akechi.
instead of the Akechi light.
Yeah.
I also love the idea. You find this out obviously later, but Akechi knew that by defeating Maruki, it meant his death, and
Mhm.
because the
And
only reason Akechi was back, supposedly, we'll get into what we see at the ending later, but supposedly the only reason Akechi was back was because of Maruki's fabricated reality.
yeah, because like, oh, we want to make Joker's ideal reality. Oh, we'll make it so he doesn't have to go to prison for a few months.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
it seems like a weird thing. Like, okay, sure, I guess.
Um,
And but yeah, it's definitely, yeah, once that you get that realization, like, oh, he's only here because Marky allows him to be here. And even Akechi knowing that and still being like, let's fuck this dude up
yeah, he's like,
and stop this shit from happening, is I'd
the
rather
idea
be dead
than
than
live under
exist
this
in
guy's
this world.
thumb.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's like, he's not a moral character, but I find myself agreeing with him,
Yeah.
like philosophically.
Right,
I might have
absolutely.
moral differences from Akechi, but philosophically, the guy is on point. It's like, I would rather be, you know what it is? He's all about freedom. That's what Akechi's all about. The
Yeah.
freedom to be who he is, which is
He's
a
a real
lot of
freedom
what this
fighter.
game is about. It's about
Yeah.
finding the freedom to be who you are, the rebel inside.
If you remember, the original like ad campaign for the original Persona 5 was, you are a slave, you want emancipation, and like that was the first imagery or anything that we saw from that game, was it's all about being a slave to either society or whatever, and very much being like, I mean, even he was a slave to society.
Well, what's funny is, like, I see so many parallels to Pinocchio. Pinocchio's all about becoming a real boy,
Okay.
cutting the strings that hold you down, not being a marionette pulled by your appetites or by
Right.
authority. And who guides Pinocchio in the original story? A little blue fairy. And who's Lavenza? You see this little blue butterfly fairy type thing following you around. So, there's I see just a lot of Pinocchio archetypes taking place here, where
Interesting.
everybody is kind of going through the I'm a real boy, or, I'm a real girl kind of phase of like cutting your strings.
Yeah,
being
I'm
who
sorry,
you are.
just because I'm thinking of Akechi. I'm a real boy. But yeah, no, you're total. I would agree with that assessment. Yeah, absolutely.
And just to see one character, he was the only unwavering character. If you're going to talk
Yeah.
about what character among all these Phantom Thieves knows who they are, it's Akechi.
Yeah.
He knows who he is, and he's not willing to compromise it. He's all about freedom. He'd rather be dead than live under the thumb of some ideologue.
And even
And I respect it.
yeah, and I was even gonna say, even in the face of the rest of the Phantom Thieves that are like, is he okay? And everyone's just like, is this
Yeah, I
what
think
he's
Sumeri's
really
like that. Like, that's Akechi?
Yeah, like,
It's like, yeah,
yeah, he's like, yeah,
that's him.
that's him, I
He's a
guess.
sick
Yeah, like,
fuck.
just let him go nuts. And I'm glad that they did, because that was,
My favorite
it was,
part of the epilogue was Akechi.
Yeah.
I could say that through and through. Before we get onto Maruki, which is where
Mhm.
most of the meat and potatoes
the
of
real
the epilogue
shit.
is, we get a little flash at the end of the game that Akechi very well. I'm gonna roll with it. Okay, I'm gonna tell a little story. So obviously, Akechi disappears at the end of the game. He's presumed to be dead now. The credits are rolling, and again, this is another one of those moments where it's 1 a.m. and I'm just sitting there like, I know this motherfucker's not dead. I know they wouldn't kill off this incredible character. I know Persona 5 Scramble is a sequel. They're not just going to not have a catchy. I don't know. These are just the thoughts running through my head. Not saying I'm right in any of them. But then that scene happens where Joker looks out the window and you see that badge and you see that black glove and it's 1 o'clock in the morning and there I go, right on command. Oh my God! There he is! There, like, have you seen that meme where it's like DiCaprio like holding a drink and he's like,
Yeah. Oh.
like that was me. That was me. Just like, there he is. And like the amount of joy I felt.
That's
I'm
amazing.
like, we're going to get more catchy in the future. Just couldn't have ended the game better for me at any point.
Absolutely. And I feel like, because, you know, there's the cynical side of me that's like, oh, I've seen this in like countless animes and shit before of like, oh, they see it, but is it? I don't know. But I think with how well that his character has been recepted from the original Persona 5 even through all to now, I think we'll be seeing more of a catchy.
I think so too.
If any future, you know, spin-off games that we're going to have, you know, P5S, and then, you know, if they decide to do anything else.
Oh, they're going to milk this cow, and they absolutely should.
Yeah.
They absolutely should.
As much as I would like to see a Persona 6, and one day we will.
I'm
sure. You know,
we will
at the end of the next generation, maybe, or something. You know, but
I'm sure,
you know, we're gonna get it. We already have a dancing game, but we'll get it. Well, I don't know. We'll get a fighting game, and you know, we'll get a third Persona Q in there. Why not?
Why the hell not, right? And then we'll get a PC release, and I'll buy this game for the 3rd time.
Oh yeah. When it eventually comes out on PC and Switch.
And then there's a Switch release, and I'll buy it a 4th time.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I will.
But let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's talk about Dr. Maruki. Now, I've got a slew of shit to talk about, but do you want to go first? Kind of give your thoughts?
Yeah, just real quick. I love his character, pretty through and through. Like, I knew that he was going to have some play in something later on because of his, you know, because he is the only other character besides Shido and Futaba's mom that knows what cognitive sciences are, you know, and actually is like trying to do something and has, you know, he's researching it and actively. So I'm like, is he gonna like? I knew something was gonna happen involving that at some point. I thought maybe at the end he'd come be like, hey guys, I know, hey, Memento's crazy, huh? But you know, I like his, you know. Like at the end of the day, even when he goes through this whole change of like wanting to change the world and whatever, is that, you know, ultimately, like, yeah, he's just a dude who was just given this ability seemingly for no reason.
He was chosen.
Right? He was chosen to enact whatever his persona's will of control, or who knows, you know, but I think, you know, as much as, you know, kind of like how you're saying about Akechi being, you know, very, you know, he's not unwavering at any point. And I kind of like Maruki for the same reason. You know, even though
they're similar in that regard.
I don't agree with exactly with what he's doing, but I do enjoy characters that don't, you know, I mean, sometimes it could get annoying, you know, like when they're so good to a fault, right? Like he's trying to be so good that it winds its way back around to being like, you know, you're kind of evil. You know,
as they say, the road to hell's paved with good intentions.
Exactly.
And that happens quite literally. And, you know, speaking to your point about Maruki, is you got to love that, like, he's not trying to force you into his world.
He's like, hey, you can, like, I don't want to fight you guys. I want you to on your own side, you know, accord. Yeah. You know, and, you know, like I said before, I like how the game itself even tries to be like, I don't know, man, seems pretty cool. I don't know. Morgana's a human. You know?
we'll save that for the very end.
Oh man. But yeah, that's, you know, I like that this whole entire section of the game does something that Persona games generally don't do, where, you know, it's very much like, hey, this is the right way to do things, and you're like, yeah, considering especially where some of the previous games go in terms of like where the villains are and who they are, I'd be like, yeah, I don't feel any sort of conflict here of like, I'm not feeling bad for any of these people. But this is the first time where you're kind of like, like, yeah, like I can see where, where you would think that this is okay to some extent, and, like I remember when we were first kind of talking about this, and it's just like Marky as a character is so, he's not unique in terms of characters from, any kind of fiction, but for that story, is just like a complete breath of fresh air almost,
Well,
and
because now your main antagonist went from being a god to being human.
yeah, to being
And
incredibly human,
incredibly
to
human.
a incredibly flawed human, which I am glad, because again, and I think the Persona series itself is very much about the flaws of humanity. And, if you want to go back to even the Shin Megami Tensei series, which the Persona series is a spin-off of, it is very much about, humanity and their flaws and everything that encompasses all that. And I'm glad to see a little bit more, because like, at least with because Persona 4 definitely kind of stepped away from a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, it was a little bit there because like Persona 3 is very much like super dark in that way, and then Persona 4 is very kind of light and airy, and then
you can tell from the art styles, honestly.
P5 kind of falls somewhere in the middle of like, it has like a darker tone than 4, but it's still kind of light and airy and, oh, hey, very kind of like jokey and weird, but I like how they sort of brought that new perspective to the franchise itself of like, it's not so cut and dry of like, hey, there's literal God over there saying that, humanity doesn't want to be free or whatever, and it's actually kind of interesting that Marky's kind of whole thing is kind of the same as the God of Control. It's just a different way of going about it.
Well, the thing I love the most about it is there was something from the original game that didn't sit well with me. And it was after you beat the God of Control and you see like the blue lights lifting from the ground and everything's going back to normal. And then Morgana gives you that speech of like, hey, reality can be what you want to be. It's a result of cognition. Reality can be what you want. And, I accepted that when I first played the game, but it kind of felt a little out of place in some ways. I'm like, maybe, and then I think I have to sneeze.
No.
Look into the light. Nope, I'm good. But I'm gonna get that out of my fucking face now. But it didn't quite sit well with me, and I just put it off as maybe in the localization, the real like context got a little lost. I get the general idea. But what I think this epilogue did was kind of address that. It's like, oh, so reality could be what you want as a result of your cognition. Well, here's Maruki, who as a result of your cognition, you want your trauma to go away. Now it's gone, but is that a good thing? So I think it's kind of cool that they turned the original ending on its head and just took it one step further.
Yeah, and it's like, not only is it what you want it to be, but we can make it what everyone wants it to be, which I never understand the logistics of that, of like, how can you possibly make a reality that is suitable for everybody? But,
I think it's just I guess it works out in some way.
It just works. It's like King Crimson. He just works. It just works. People will know. But
I was just going to say, I think it was great that they, again, took their, like, sort of, how would you put it? Their moral resolve, and they took it one step further just to make it neat and clean, because the whole idea that's going on here is like, Maruki's a guy who's offering to remove humanity from their trauma, from their pain, from their hurt. But, anyone who's listening, if you love stories, if you love characters, or you can just examine your own life as an example, the trauma and the tough things we have to deal with, that's what makes us stronger. It makes you who you are. It makes you stronger. It makes you better. It makes you better if you can overcome your trauma and hardships. It just makes you like a warrior of the universe. You can help people with their problems. You can then better address your problems in the future. It's like going through our
everything builds off of each other.
Exactly. It's like you keep moving forward. So it's like humanity is personified by overcoming our shortcomings, overcoming our trauma, overcoming our problems. That's what makes us stronger. That's what got us to this point. That's why, you know, we live in societies where people can be fed more than they need to be.
Yeah.
It's you know, that's how progression works. And it's like, if you got rid of everyone's trauma, you're just going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck, stagnant. And it's like, that's hell. It might look pretty, but you're living in hell.
You're living in a perpetual hell.
In a perpetual hell.
You know, nothing's getting worse, nothing's getting better. You know,
like just
because
you know, it's anti-human. Really... This is why I was so repulsed by it. I'm like, this is anti-human to its core. This whole game spent 100 hours telling me why trauma is good, why getting stronger from your hardships is better. And
just
now
for this asshole to come in and be like, no, I'm doing the big good by getting rid of your big sad.
Yeah, because when you think about it, the whole reason the Phantom Thieves all became friends is because they had these things happen to them. And without those traumas to unite them, their friendships are just stale. It doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't
and they show it to you. They show it like, you know, they're like, hey, it's been a while since we all got together. It's like, yeah, because they all have their own ideal lives to live. So why are they going to hang out with each other, and have be all in the shit together when it's like, no, everyone's got their ideal lives. Why should we be together?
Exactly.
Our bonds don't mean anything, or not as much as they did, And
yeah,
it makes 100% sense.
They don't have those underlying tragedies to unite them. And I want to tip my cap to Japanese media for treating Christianity like a mythology, because once you start looking at Christianity like a mythology, it gets a whole lot more interesting. Yeah. And basically the whole ending of this game, when you reach Maruki, is you are in the Garden of Eden.
Oh, yeah, and it's a very, very, explicit about what it
biblical.
Is. It literally calls it that.
And do you recall what his final Persona Awakening was? Do you remember the name by chance?
Oh, God, I don't. Adam and Eve.
Right. Garden of
Eden.
Yeah.
When it's the big form. Okay. Yeah.
And
totally.
That's the whole thing. Maruki's kind of going through the original sin. He ate from the tree of knowledge. And in the Bible, like God says, they will become like we are if they eat from the tree of knowledge. So what did Maruki do? He ate from the tree of knowledge and essentially became a god.
Yep.
And he did that on behalf of his persona, Adam. And again, it's just
super. And also, you got to remember too.
Sound.
Yeah, and then just like on a lesser note, just within the context of Persona, him getting a persona and having that exist in real life before the merging of Mementos and reality is pretty nuts. I mean, I don't think it's a first, but it's definitely interesting because it's not something you see.
It's definitely unique to all the characters in Persona 5 at the least.
Yeah, and it's something that is, it's very interesting. And now I'm thinking about it because, we see all those backtracking, all of his backstory. And it's interesting that when he first gets his persona and was his girlfriend or fiance Rumi?
Rumi, yeah.
She, the way that she, he just interprets, because she went through trauma, right? And then his persona comes out and fixes it by making her forget him. And so it's interesting that he takes that as like, the only way for someone to be healed, quote unquote, is to have the pain removed forcibly from them. And it's really interesting that if that one moment turned out differently, he might have not have gone down that exact route of, I have to literally take out people, or not really even take out the pain, but shield them from the pain by making them forget about it.
And I think that
was very interesting.
One of the things that made me like him so much was, when it became clear to him that Rumi could be cured of all of this, but the price to pay was she had to forget him. And Maruki makes it clear how much he's head over heels in love with Rumi. But when he sees she can go back to normal and be happy, she just needs to forget you and all the trauma. And he kind of accepts that pretty willingly. he's like, I can't, at a certain point, he's like, I ceased to be the Maruki I was. I'm now just a tool to bring about this ideal reality.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah, when he
again,
starts getting that like sort of you know, for lack of a better term, God complex.
oh, he's a narcissist. That's why he's an old gold. You know, he's the golden
Oh,
narcissist.
dude, his like I'm not, for lack of a better term, Phantom Thief attire is some of the greatest. Like
So cool.
his giant mask
The
and
helmet, yeah.
you know the he's got his scepter and stuff, and I'm like that. It was very unexpected. Like I knew he was gonna have some sort of a boss form, but not like white and gold. And I'm like, all right, this guy, you know, he's got something, you know. He looks better than most, even some of the other Phantom Thieves character designs are. But hey, you know.
Well, they had time to think on this one. But he was a very complex character. It's like, you know, and that's what I like about him. He's morally complex. He's a selfless villain, and you don't get a lot of those. He's a selfless, narcissistic villain. Talk about a mind fuck.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, you know, you see it in, you know, in some other things of, you know, like a guy who is, he's too good to a fault. Like he's too lawful good, you know what I mean? Like that, where it bends back around to being, you know, like this bastardization of, you know, what, you know, good actually is, right? And it's like something where he has, like you said, the bestest of intentions. You know, he's not forcing them to do it, even though he kind of already was already.
He is trying to like he is being persuasive, because he really believes he knows best.
Yeah, and he's a guy, he believes in his convictions. And those, like I was saying before, those kinds of characters, you know, even though some of them might get a little on the annoying side, I can respect a character that has convictions and sticks to them, even if they're flawed, especially if they're flawed, because then that makes them interesting. And being like, is there anything that would turn them from that? And in this case, a beat down is what forced him to change his outlook, pretty much. Which, by the way, that's got to be easily the best scene in the entire game.
Oh, the punching
is literally like you're in a fight, and it's like you're still selecting attack and everything, but it's just a full on, like, and it's mocapped. You can tell it's like mocapped, and you know.
The only thing I would have preferred to that, because I did like the idea of these two just like duking it out fist to fist. The only thing I would have preferred is if they went full blown anime cutscene with that. But I'll take the interactive battle.
Yeah, I am a huge sucker for like the two guys battling out, like it's the end of the world, or whatever, the stakes are high, right? And it's like, let's just have this big old slap fight at the end, just to like really cap it off,
Well, I think at the end of the day, Marky wanted to give it everything he had, and he still had a little left, and he's like, he couldn't accept defeat until he was just done.
He literally his whole entire thing was that he was not going to give up, and it's straight up, and it's like he got beat again and again and again, and it was like, all right, okay, I get it, guys.
I gotta go change my heart now.
Your resolve is stronger than mine. I got it. Okay.
Well, I want to talk about
go be a taxi driver.
I'm glad you said that, because before we wrap it up, I want to talk about Maruki as the taxi driver. Some people think it's random. I actually think it's perfect, because think about your normal cab driver. What is
he kind of says it.
Yeah.
In that scene, of like, it's a good way for him to like kind of still help people in a way.
Whereas him being, the golden narcissist Maruki, where he was trying to help people at this super grand level, which is funny. I only say this because I have a brother who's got a master's in psychology, so I talk to him about this stuff a lot. And, I have other people who are in that field, and they tell me, like, it's not a therapist's job to really fix anybody. It's not their job to forcibly fix you and give you the answers. It's their job to help you realize your answers
on your way to self-actualization and realization.
Exactly. But here you have Maruki, who's kind of, when you think about it, is the antithesis of psychology.
Yeah,
He's
and
he's trying to fix your problems as the therapist, which is not what a therapist should be doing. It's
yeah,
not his
yeah.
job to fix your problems, but
Hmm.
he takes on that role. So him being the cab driver is like, all right, so I tried to literally be God and help everybody. Maybe if I want to help people, I should just help them get from A to B. And when you think about a cab driver who like just shoots the shit with a like tiny small talk, and then
Hmm.
maybe they say something that's passively interesting or some little small advice, it's almost like he's going back to square one. He's like,
Right.
why don't I just like talk to people as I drive them around? I'll give them advice and let them go on their way.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
clearly he got a little bit detached from
Yeah.
what people actually are like and what they want.
He wanted to be a
So,
shepherd. He wanted to be a shepherd. He tried to be the Christ figure. It didn't work out. So now he's just being a much
yeah.
smaller shepherd. And
Let me,
I was like, it's funny. I have a lot of friends who like their line of work didn't work out, or they had to like start their life over, and they all end up as Uber drivers to start. So
hey man, it's an easy thing to get into because hey,
that's why I
you
think
got a car, you got insurance. There
yeah.
you go.
So like the idea that Maruki would just kind of start over at square one there,
Yeah,
sign
because like
sign of the times.
he's not going to be he's not going to go back to being a a school psychologist, which
No.
which I don't think he would probably do anything in that field ever again, at least
Yeah.
not for a long time.
I think when they changed his heart, they changed like his
Yeah,
entire outlook on the
yeah,
world.
he's just like, yeah, I was kind of an asshole, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I'm
Although
gonna
who
go,
knows? We might
I'm gonna go
see him
drive
and
a
his
cab.
persona in Scramble. They might come through. I do want to wrap this up soon. We're coming up on an hour, but we
Sure.
have to talk about. So how did you react to the Morgana scene?
Of
You know,
yeah, well,
waking up with him
it's
sleeping on.
funny because I had seen like way before, like when P5R was first like announced. There was like a little snippet of a cutscene with that portrait art of him as a human, and like I didn't immediately, it was like because you see Maruki and you see Kasumi, and initially I was just like, oh, it's just another dude. But then
Mhm.
once I saw that picture again and was like, he shares a lot of design elements with a certain other character who often wish that he was a human. So I loved it. I am kind of it's weird because like I feel like there should have been more of that stuff, but I understand why they didn't put as much in. I do like how everyone, like when you first wake up in the new reality and everyone's just kind of like, oh yeah, everything's been like this always. What are you talking about? And as soon as you tell Morgana like, I don't think, like, have you always been this way? And you're like, oh yeah, I have been, haven't I? And then because he has a completely different voice when he's a human, and then but when you talk to him as you're talking to the rest of the Phantom Thieves, his voice reverts back to his high-pitched voice,
Mhm.
which I think was a nice little touch of like, like, yeah, maybe things aren't like this. They aren't supposed to be this way,
Mhm.
you know. And I loved that I loved this entire epilogue. Really,
Me too.
it was something that easily could have been like, bless you, that could have
Thank
been
you.
like I said, kind of like tacked on and kind of felt like kind of forced and
That's what I was worried about.
mhm.
Happy
Because
to be
there
wrong.
are there are the previous Persona games that have gotten this sort of treatment with like a new game plus kind of thing. That's kind of happened a little bit in some of them, so I was a little bit worried that it was going to be something similar to that, but no, I loved it. And like you were saying before, it's like I could totally see myself playing a new game plus of
Yeah,
this.
the replay value on a 120-hour campaign is absolutely remarkable. I've never seen anything like it.
Mhm.
Um,
Especially a game, and I 100%ed this game trophy wise. So, and that's very rare for me. If I 100% something trophy wise, I usually never ever go back unless it's something I really enjoy. And you know,
this
I
game's a
think
good
that's a
example
pretty
of it.
good. Yeah,
This
this
game
game is
is
a pretty good example of and if you, I don't know if anyone who would be listening to this that has not played this game, but if you are watching and you haven't played this game, you should.
yep. Even
And
with all
sorry
these
for
spoilers, it'll
yeah,
still be
even with
worth
all the
it.
spoilers at this point, yeah, you've literally spoiled everything at this point. So, I mean, we didn't spoil the 80%. Well,
Yeah,
sort
the
of,
first
kind
80.
of,
Yeah, we didn't
kind of, sort
spoil
of.
the initial campaign.
No, I mean, we spoiled the Yabba Bobo, whatever
Yeah. Well,
his name is.
I just wanted to. When I saw Morgana sleeping on the bed, I could not stop laughing.
Yeah.
But there was
Yeah,
something
it makes you think of like, wait, so in this reality, were they always sleeping in the same bed? Like,
yeah, right.
or it's like, did they just like this one time that he, instead of sleeping on the couch, he slept in the bed, because it's technically not a new
Yeah. It was, and it
so
worked
good.
in terms of comedic effect. But there was something
Oh, yeah.
Charlotte pointed out to me. I'll have to check this on my next playthrough. But do you remember just before that reality happened, they were all watching TV, and Morgana was like, "Man, that guy's real handsome. Anyone who looks like that could easily woo someone like Lady
Yep.
On." So that's the portrait that he took on in the ideal reality.
Yep.
He took that guy from TV.
That was his idealized version of himself. Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that, because and I knew exactly as he was saying it. I'm like, oh, I think I'm about to see him in human form. And as much as I've obviously that whole entire reality is like a bastardization. It was really nice to see like the whole group together, or well, I say the group, but like seeing like Sojiro and Futaba and her mom and and Morgana there, and everyone just like kind of hanging out, and be like, oh hey, it's like a little family, like a nice little family. And
it was nice to just get
that kind of stuff
glimpse.
warms my heart a little bit,
Yeah, honestly, in many ways, it was a glimpse of what could have been. Futaba got one day with the family she deserved. But just to wrap this up, it was a tremendous game. If you've listened this far and you have played it, go play it again. If you listen this far and you haven't, go play it.
Yeah, go play it. And I would hold that recommendation out to the rest of the Persona series as well. It might be a little hard to play some of the older ones, but Persona 4 Golden's on Steam right now. That's probably the best way to play it. And there are other ways to play the others. I'll let you people at home Google that. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you one way or another how to play those things, but you can. You certainly can play them.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on and talking Persona with me. I mean, I have so much love for this game. I'm gonna want to do more episodes on it as time goes on. I hope you'll join me.
I said we should have a Persona podcast at some point.
Dude, I told you I just need to probably play 3 and 4. I can't in good faith do a podcast with only knowledge of 5. But I'm definitely gonna play Golden on Steam. It looks incredible.
We will have talks about that.
We have Persona 3 for the PS2. If you could see my PS2 over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
We got Persona 3 for the PS2.
Good man. Good man.
We're going to get through it all. And, plenty more in the future to come. Sages of the Lodge, thank you. All my listeners and watchers, thank you. And Chris, most of all, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah. Hey, and everyone, if you want to listen to us talk about other games, particularly one video game, Final Fantasy VII Remake, we also do a podcast called the Midgar Minute, and which I think we're about to record another episode of after this.
Right out.
So, it's been doing good lately, and I just thought, we just throw it out there. I mean.
And there will be a link in the
and
description for all of you too. Obviously, I link all the content together. So if you want to listen to that podcast, there'll be links for it in the description. You can find us on Instagram. It's on all platforms, the Midgar Minute. We have a good time. If you're a fan of that show and you happen to be listening to this episode, thank you for tuning in to us.
There will be cross promotion. Don't worry.
There most certainly will. But everybody, again, can't thank you enough. And we will see you for episode 71.
Peace.